It's ooky spooky season, and we've played all the best horror games around to let you know which ones are fun-filled thrillers and which you should run away screaming from. Turn off the lights and check out our list of the best, truly dread-filled games that you can play right now. Building on the themes of memory loss, pursuing monsters, and otherworldly magic, at number 10, it's... wait, what was it called again? I forget. Ah yes, Amnesia Rebirth. Building on the previous games in the series to deliver a tense, playable slice of horror fiction. There's almost a literary feel to the game, as you explore the darkness as a French explorer lost in the desert. Familiar mechanics like sanity maintenance returns, but this time contained within a much more coherent and enticing story. Whether you're a fan of the Amnesia franchise or not, there's a real page-turning, must-see-what-happens feel to this adventure. The monster encounters can be horrific and stressful, but there's also space in between where the story expands. It twists and it turns, and it really sells it. So make sure you don't forget about this one. Even though the Dead Space remake is coming on January 27th, 2023, the original is still an excellent, dread-filled, third-person shooter, all wrapped up in a beautifully gory package. Borrowing from Alien and other sci-fi classics, the 2008 release put players in the role of Isaac Clarke, an engineer trapped on a derelict spacecraft. Soon Isaac finds out that the ship isn't as empty as it first seemed. A strange alien artifact has transformed everyone on board into hideous, flesh-eating creatures, each more horrific than the last. Dead Space crafts a horrifying experience by limiting the player on ammo, and really letting you know what exactly is going on in the continually shifting story. So much of the disturbing atmosphere is built on what you hear, and the amazing sound design uses audio to fashion an entire deadly world around you. Though the sequel pulled back on the scares somewhat in favour of cinematic action, the original remains trapped in our nightmares. Soma has problems, largely the clumsy stealth sections, but it also has, hands down, one of the most unpleasantly disturbing stories of any game in this list. To explain why exactly would ruin it, but this game plays with ideas of consciousness and what makes you, you, in a clearly terrifying way. When you're not exploring the rusting, decrepit undersea base of Pathos 2, you're playing with some pretty heavy metaphysical concepts, fit to give you nightmares for years to come. The undersea and biotech elements make the Bioshock comparison hard to avoid, but while there are similarities, this is far more unpleasant and ethically shocking. The new safe mode means that you can also now play this just for the story. Finish it, and see if you'll be able to sleep after.
If we are able to save even just a small piece of ourselves, why wouldn't we do that?
Outlast offers a first-person trek through a setting literally no one in real life would willingly check out. An old asylum that at first seems abandoned, but also strangely very active indeed. At night, in the mountains, miles from help, alone. Who does that? The setup alone is perfect horror game fodder, but this plays out like found footage the game, all via a clever use of the video camera's night vision mode to see in the dark. The grainy glowing green view it creates gets a little too close to real life as well. It's a great game to play with your friends too, because at some point you'll both be screaming together. Silent Hill as a franchise is home to some of the most terrifying enemies and situations in gaming history, but the series' most abiding horror is Silent Hill 2. This PS2 classic manifests our deepest fears, revealing that there's no greater evil than our own imagination. Though you'll encounter creatures like the iconic nurses and Pyramid Head himself, protagonist James Sunderland is far more threatened by his own personal demons. James has returned to Silent Hill answering a letter that seems to come from his dead wife, but all he finds are reminders of his own anguish and guilt over her death. Silent Hill 2 doesn't just present you with a horror game worth playing, but a story worth being listened to. The only reason that this isn't our top horror game is that it's VR only, which obviously limits a lot of people's access to it. However, if you do have a VR headset, then this is an essential horror game to play. It's one of the greatest playable interpretations of the source material ever made. From stabbing screwdrivers into zombies' heads, to cautiously exploring the rotting houses, terrified of peeking every corner. This absolutely nails the zombie horror fantasy. There's a semi-open world too, where you explore and revisit hubs, crisscrossing locations in the search of valuable resources, enemies, and allies to help. It's worth noting that it's got nothing to do with the comics or TV shows beyond the zombies themselves, so you don't need to be a fan to enjoy it. It seems almost unimaginable that over 20 years after the original PS1 release, the classic Resident Evil 2 is back, and it's one of the best horror games ever made. Resident Evil 2 Remake is a ground-up remake of that iconic original PS1 game. It genuinely melds the old and new perfectly, earning it a high spot on our list. It's a perfect retelling of Leon and Claire's original attempts to escape a zombie-filled Raccoon City, with all the monsters, set pieces, and story beats that you remember. But it's also built with today's horror sensibilities, merging an almost beautiful level of indulgent gore with tight gunplay, clever puzzles, and some beautiful levels. This is as essential now as the original game was back when it launched. Countless games have been inspired by elements of the Alien franchise, be it James Cameron's Space Marines, Ellen Ripley's Fortitude, or the chilling power of silence in a soundtrack. Despite all of that, Alien Isolation may be one of this series' greatest gaming triumphs. It takes the gut-wrenching fear fostered by the lone xenomorph in the original film and extends it into a lengthy game. Isolation's tense survival gameplay keeps the pulse pounding for hours and hours. You take on the role of Ripley's daughter, Amanda, searching a derelict space station for her mother, only to find the same beast that she once fought. You're constantly on guard from the cinematic AI of your alien hunter. This means holding your breath as you narrowly avoid detection, or of course, screaming in terror as you fail to reach safety. The atmosphere the game sustains is impressive enough, and it deserves even more credit for taking the xenomorph, a movie monster bordering on cliché, and making it terrifying once again. Most games can make you jump, they can make you scream, but few can make you doubt yourself in real life. Layers of Fear initially appears to be very familiar as you explore a spooky, creepy, and cavernously empty house. The gothic story unravels slowly as you play an unnamed artist returning home. It soon becomes clear, though, that madness has overtaken the painter, and it would express itself in the unreliable narration of the physical world. Doors disappear, and corridors warp out of shape. The game rearranges itself in such a way to recreate the main character's madness, and only a few hours in, you'll find yourself questioning everything. Was that desk on that side of the room when I first came in? Am I sure? Add to that the nature of the protagonist's illness, an obsessional painting made from less than savoury materials, and you have one of the greatest horror games of all time. It could have been a true disaster, a clunky, forced update to a revered series that left fans clamouring for the bombastic nonsense of Resident Evil 6. But the truth is, Resi 7 is a triumph, smartly feeding off the best horror movies of the last 20 years, effortlessly easing all that edgy new stuff into a recognisable, modern reinvention of the series. The central story is fantastic, the mysteries artfully concealed, and your tormentors, the Bakers, are brilliantly subversive. Switching the action to first person adds some VR possibilities, but also makes the horror feel uncomfortably close. Grueling, compelling stuff in a setting that you'll remember long after exploring it close up. But perhaps the cleverest trick is just how true all of this feels to the franchise. The safe rooms have the same sense of unsettling respite, ammo feels desperately scarce, and the boss fights have the right mix of terror and glowing, oozing weak points to shoot. It's a tight, smart horror game, and far better than most fans had dared to hope for. It's not the scariest or most subtle game on the list, but a brilliantly chilling rebirth that's well worth a play. All of this talk of iconic horror games has me inspired to go visit that abandoned mansion in the middle of the woods. What's the worst that could happen, right? So remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Games Radar's YouTube channel, and I'll see you on the next video, if I make it back alive. Happy Halloween all!